It hasn't been my day, my week, my month, or even my year. Whether you don't want to admit it or not, 90s nostalgia is back in a big way. Personally, I am not immune to its enticing charms, but given what's happened to me, let's just say that you should be careful what you wish for. To be clear, I'm not talking about repurchasing all my old Pogs or wearing LA Gear tennis shoes. I'm not even talking about listening to music of that era like grunge or 90s alternative. No. Personally, I have been reliving the 90s by binge-watching DVD box sets of all the classic 90s sitcoms. Every night, I get comfortable with Frasier, Uncle Jesse, and Tim Toolsman Taylor, and I feel like I am laughing with a very diverse group of friends from the 90s. I bought all of the official box sets and even bootlegs of, shall we say, less popular shows like Phenom and Baby Talk, the show where Tony Danza was the actual voice of a baby. I just can't get enough. About 2 years ago, I had just finished watching all 236 episodes of Friends, the greatest show of all. As I gently slid Frasier DVD number 2 for season 3 back into its pristine paper sheath, I decided it was time to spend some quality time with my friends in Friends again. First, as I always did, I retrieved my oversized Central Perk coffee cup out of the dusty old cupboard and brewed a big pot of coffee until that transformative aroma made the whole apartment smell just like a real New York coffee shop. I even plugged in the curling iron and did my best to give myself the Rachel, the hairstyle that defined the 90s for an entire generation of women and girls as well. We all used to give each other this cool look during sleepovers, but now that I'm an adult, I just have to do it by myself. I was planning to make it a binge night of only Friends, so I started maybe around 7:30 or 8. It was just starting to get dark and I wasn't even a little bit sleepy. I had my enormous Central Perk cup brimming with Joe after all. Those cups are so big I have to use both hands to hold it right because the doctor says I have weak wrists and fingers too. Basically, I'm just trying to say that I wasn't at all tired when I plopped that DVD disc into the plastic tray and pushed the well-worn play button. I clicked play all and the opening guitar of that classic tune by the Rembrandts filled the air, and I have to admit that I teared up a bit in anticipation of the familiar odyssey of laughs and friendship I was about to embark on. I never did get to embark though, and at that time I believed I had simply fallen asleep before the episode even started. The disc had finished playing by the time I woke up on the couch. It was dark outside and, according to my phone, over 3 hours had passed by. I'd never done anything like that before. I noticed that I was still clutching my oversized novelty mug tightly in my right fist, but it was empty, of course. I didn't see any telltale brown stains on the couch, thank goodness, but I did have little streams of coffee on my previously beautiful blouse. I looked like a sloppy sipper or something, but I couldn't have been drinking coffee in my sleep. I got up and moved to the kitchen, where I nearly slipped on the wet brown linoleum in my kitchen. It looked like someone filled a Super Soaker 50 with coffee and then went to war. In my kitchen. It took me a while to mop it all up because I'm very bad at mopping. Fortunately, it provided me time to reflect on what I knew about sleepwalking. There was that episode of Family Matters where Urkel kept sleepwalking into Carl Winslow's bedroom and smacking him with a newspaper because he overheard Carl say he wished Urkel would go away forever after he ruined Carl's ship in a bottle. Nothing like that had ever happened to me though. I get along with all my coworkers and the people in my building. The odd thing was that I don't remember feeling sleepy. It had been an ordinary day at work and I never went to bed before 2 a.m. It was weird, but I wasn't too worried. I had some frozen pizza and fell asleep to an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I was hoping this was just a one-time incident, but this was the beginning of when my life took a turn for the absolute wild and crazy. It happened again. The very next night I blacked out as Friends was starting. This time it was even earlier. I started at 6:30 and then randomly woke up at 10:05. This time I had left my coffee cup on the table next to the couch, but for some strange reason, it was now on the dining room table, on top of a completely drenched Season 1 Disc 2 Hanging with Mr. Cooper DVD. Did I do that? So I must have been sleepwalking, right? So far I had done it twice. I was worried it would happen while I was driving or something. I ejected the DVD and examined it. Why was I falling asleep every time I tried to watch it? I put it back in the player and listened to the distant whir of the laser. I was being so silly, I thought as I hesitated before pushing the play button. It started to play, the theme music came on, and then I woke up in my bathtub. It was 2:30 in the morning. It had happened again. The bathtub wasn't filled with water or ice or anything, but I immediately thought of the urban legend and checked to see if my kidneys were missing. It took me a while to figure out where kidneys were, but they weren't missing. Still, I was totally freaked. My coffee cup, half full of cold coffee, was perched on the toilet like it was watching over me. I stayed up doing research on narcolepsy, where people randomly fall asleep when they aren't even tired, and discovered that I probably don't have narcolepsy. For one thing, this wasn't random. I could basically control it with the push of a button, and it only happened with friends. I was too confused and frankly embarrassed to visit a doctor, so I did the next best thing. I set up my laptop to record myself in the living room. I positioned it so you could clearly see both the TV and me on the couch. You could also see my recliner and the door to my apartment next to it. I filled the coffee mug with water as I was sick to death of scrubbing brown stains out of things. I hit record on the laptop and basically just explained my situation because I thought I would show it to a doctor or something later. I said something like, "For some reason these DVDs are causing me to pass out and sleepwalk, I think." Would a doctor even believe this? He'd probably just think I wanted drugs or something. I took a deep breath and nervously pushed play on the DVD player. I woke up at my dining room table. 3 hours had passed, according to the clock on the wall. I checked my laptop and stopped the recording. I hesitated before pushing play because whatever was making me pass out might be an audio cue, like when hypnotists snap their fingers to bring people in and out of consciousness. I hit the mute button and then the play button. After about 5 seconds, I could see my head drop in the video, like I was in a deep trance. I unmuted the video and I could hear the familiar voices of Courtney Cox and Jennifer Aniston arguing about something. The studio audience was just loving it, judging by the sounds of laughter. I was still a bit nervous that I was going to pass out again, but really I felt fine. I heard a door close on the show, and the familiar and slightly nervous voice of Ross, played by David Swimmer, filled the room. Suddenly on the video, my head jerked up, my hair hanging in my face. I could hear both my own voice and the voice of Ross say simultaneously, "Don't ask me about the day I just had at the museum." We said it at the exactly same time. Now, I've seen this episode before, but even now I know I can't say it line for line. What was happening? A few moments passed and then I flung my arms up and Ross and I both said, "Is nobody going to ask me about my day?" And then the sound of sitcom laughter. I continued watching, terrified as the hypnotized me in the video perfectly recited lines simultaneously with David Swimmer for a few minutes. Why was I Ross? More importantly, why was I not Rachel, whom I identified with? After a few minutes, the Ross/me stood up, arms swinging loosely, and lurched over to where my mug of water was. I lifted it to my mouth and just kind of poured some water on my lips and it dribbled down the front of my blouse. Then I recited some silly line with Ross. This was enough to thoroughly creep me out. Little did I know it was about to get much weirder. About halfway through the first episode, I could hear a knocking on a door, but I couldn't tell if it was on the show or in my apartment. Was it both? I watched in horror as I lumbered like maybe a penguin that was also a zombie over to my door and opened it. There was a man standing in front of me. I had never seen him before. He was also looking down at the floor. Then he said, "Could it be raining any harder outside?" along with Chandler on the television screen. This was too much. I let out a tiny squeal of terror. Was this Chandler man still in my apartment? I did a quick search, but I found nothing out of the ordinary. I double-locked the door and remembered that I left the video playing on my laptop. I could hear other voices coming from it now, and not just the familiar, friendly ones. My heart was thudding in my chest as I peered at the screen and gasped at what I saw. There were now 3 random men and 2 women who I did not recognize in my apartment, all of them reciting lines from the Friends episode that was playing on my TV. They had all gotten coffee mugs and were splashing water around and mostly spilling it on themselves like they weren't coordinated enough to actually drink it. I went into the kitchen and noticed all of my good mugs were piled in and around the sink. As I walked back, I felt the carpet in my living room and, sure enough, there was the telltale squishiness of many spills. On the screen, I was flinging my arms around clumsily while reciting all of Ross's dialogue. This whole situation was confusing to say the least, but why was I Ross, of all the friends? I probably related to him the least. I was a woman after all, and I hated going to museums. Squinting so hard I thought my eyeballs might fall out, I recognized Mr. Johnson, who lived on the first floor. I couldn't imagine him being involved in such strange shenanigans. I had heard about his arthritis, of course, but that didn't seem to bother him at all as he Racheled his way around my apartment. Why was he Rachel? Why was any of this happening? I hit pause on the video and ran down to Mr. Johnson's apartment. It took him a long time to answer the door, and he apologized, saying his hips were just killing him. He invited me inside for some lemonade, which was yellow and refreshing, and I drank it while Mr. Johnson kept complaining about his hips. About that, I said, and then asked him where he had been for the past 3 hours or so. He looked at me and then over at his television set hanging on the wall. That thing has been giving me these terrible headaches and I just pass out. It's too much, I guess. I had the TV repairman come by and look at it, but he says it's just a normal TV and it shouldn't be making those scary beeps at me. Those beeps are so scary. I thanked him for the homemade lemonade and returned to my apartment where I watched the rest of the video. So, it seemed that I wasn't the only one being hypnotized by my friend's DVDs. 5 other random people heard the call and it made them come to my apartment and we all were having a great time. The more I watched, the less weird it all seemed. We were really having fun after all. Mr. Johnson's hips weren't even bothering him, and we were all sort of laughing, though it came out kind of mumbled and muffled. Instead of turning the video over to the police, I decided to make it my regular Friday night get-together. I've recorded all of them too. I have to because I have no memory of it actually happening. I record on Friday and I watch it on Saturday. My personal friends and I are already on Season 5. Sadly, Mr. Johnson died halfway through Season 3, and we actually went a week without a Rachel, which was weird because there were these long silences when she had lines. Someone new moved into his place though, an old guy who honestly makes a better Rachel because he actually has long hair. They make me laugh, and until they die, they'll be there for me. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, true pastas are the scariest pastas.